Hello BookTube. Today I'm talking about Peter Pan by James M. Barrie. Now, just a quick note on the title. I believe technically the novel, which is what I read, this is the novel, is originally called Peter and Wendy, and I believe that was done to distinguish it from the stage play. So, Peter Pan started off as a stage play in 1904. Actually, technically, according to Wikipedia, the character was introduced in The Little White Bird from 1902, but that was somewhat a different incarnation. Peter Pan, as we know him today, was introduced in the stage play. Peter Pan came out in 1904, and then the novelization came out 7 years later and was originally called Peter and Wendy. But I think today most editions of this that you will find are simply called Peter Pan. And one of the little rules that I have for this channel is that I try to make the title of the review the same of the title of the book that I read, the edition that I read. So because this edition is called Peter Pan, this review is called Peter Pan, but just know that it's also Peter and Wendy, if that makes sense. And while I'm getting these preliminaries out of the way, apologies in advance if the picture of the book on the thumbnail doesn't match the picture I'm holding here. I'm having trouble finding a picture of this on Google Images because this edition is from 1995. This is the Barnes & Noble Children's Classics. So, yeah. Apologies if the artwork on the thumbnail is different. But yeah, Peter Pan. This is actually my third time through the Peter Pan book. I originally read it when I was in 6th grade. Now, as a child, I was always a fan of Peter Pan, the Disney movie. And in the early 90s, there was a TV show. Some of you may remember this. Peter Pan and the Pirates, which was on Fox Kids, which was another animated adventure show about Peter Pan. And so I was really hooked on the fantasy adventure element of Peter Pan. And I, as a kid, like many kids, I thought, what's not to love about this? It's got everything all in one story. You've got the pirates, you've got the mermaids, you've got the animals in Neverland, and you've got the Indians. Yeah, the Indians, huh? Okay. This is as good a time as any to talk about this, because everybody has to talk about this. The portrayal of the Indians in Peter Pan is outdated and racist. I don't think it's racist in a vicious way, meaning you're not supposed to hate the Indians. The Indians are sympathetic. They're kind of good guys in this book, but they are portrayed in a way that they're portrayed as walking stereotypes, portrayed as not humans, but stereotypes. So, it's unfortunate. I don't want to dwell on it too much because it's something everybody already knows. And I guess everybody encountering Peter Pan has a choice to make. Whether you decide that you're not going to engage with the novel because you can't get past that racist stereotype, in which case, fair enough. Or you'll choose to just overlook it and say, okay, it's unfortunate, but there's still a lot of things to enjoy in this novel. I've obviously chosen the latter. People who can't get past it and don't want to engage with this book, I respect that. But where was I? I was talking about enjoying this book when I was in 6th grade and enjoying it as a fantasy adventure. And I remember actually really enjoying it. It was... I loved the story element to it. I found the prose style was easy to read and engaging. In fact, I remember I was enjoying this story so much, I was enjoying the book so much, that I didn't want it to end, which is not a feeling I usually have. Usually I always want to finish a book so I can say, I have conquered this book, on to the next one. But with this particular book, I actually ended up rationing it, so I didn't finish it too soon. I would only do one chapter a day, would not allow myself to do more than that, just so I could savor the story as much as possible. So that was the first time I read it. The next time I read it, actually I didn't read it, I did it as an audiobook, was in my early 30s. I was going to grad school at the time and got this out from the university library as an audiobook. And would just listen to it in the background when I was going on walks or doing exercises, you know, some sort of light listening material to clear my head. And I was surprised to discover that the experience of listening to it in my 30s was a completely different experience. I had somehow never realized when I was young how humorous the book was and how satirical it was. So how tongue-in-cheek it is. That the narrator is, he's narrating the adventure, but he's also making fun of the whole thing. And once I realized that, I was puzzled that I had never picked up on that before. Like, how did I possibly miss that when I was in 6th grade? And I don't know. Maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe I actually realized it somewhat when I was in 6th grade. Or maybe when I was in 6th grade, I was just so fixated on the adventure fantasy aspect of it that just clouded everything, pushed everything else away from my mind. But when you come back to this book as an adult, you just can't help but realize how the whole thing is tongue-in-cheek, how the narrator is making fun of the whole story. In a way, which is really good. I think it's really funny at parts. Maybe not all the way through, but there are enough parts in here that really work, that you read it and you want to just kind of chuckle silently to yourself. It's kind of almost laugh out loud funny, at least for me. So yeah, that's my experience of rediscovering Peter Pan. Now, at that time, I did not yet have a BookTube channel. I was reviewing books on my blog, but I wasn't reviewing rereads at the time. I was just reviewing new reads. I've since changed my policy where now I review everything I read, whether it's a first-time read or a reread. And it was time to come back to Peter Pan. So I picked this book off the shelf, and here I am reading it the 3rd time through. So the experience of reading it the 3rd time through is actually fairly close to the experience I had revisiting this book in my early 30s, which is just delighting at the humor in it. There is a lot of good humor in it. I think that this book is, the humor in this is similar to the humor of Douglas Adams from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So just like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the book will start off with a completely ridiculous concept. And then the book will take that concept as if it was serious and just kind of narrate it through and exploring the logic of this absurd concept, where you, the reader, are just delighting in how ridiculous it all is, if that makes sense. I mentioned before that a lot of this book, the portrayal of the Indians, is a stereotype. Now, one way that maybe you could get past that is if you said to yourself, this book is not meant to be a realistic portrayal of Native Americans as real people. It's meant to just play on the stereotype that existed at the time in the popular consciousness. I know it's still something that you would not do today, but that's the way the book is written. So one example of this playing off the ridiculousness of the stereotype is the Native Americans in this book are portrayed as very expert at sneaking around and ambushing. And so they sneak around and they use the coyote call to call to each other, so that anybody else wouldn't know that they're Indians, that they think it would actually be coyotes. And the narrator mentions that the Indians are so good at this that they're actually better at the coyote call than the coyotes themselves. And then the narrator goes on to comment and says, actually, the coyotes themselves really aren't that good at the coyote call. Which is a perfect example of just the absurdist logic of this, where you can say, okay, well, the coyotes actually aren't very good at the coyote call, and that the Indians are better at it than they are. That's just all the way through this book. There's a temptation to just recount all my favorite humorous moments from this book. And I'm going to try not to do that too much, although I will do it a little bit. I'll try not to do it too much because, what would be the point? It would just spoil the book. You should get it and read it yourself and just enjoy all the absurdist humor in the narration. I have not ever read the stage play that preceded the novel. And you don't often see it in bookstores, do you? The stage play. I'm sure you could track it down on Amazon or something. As a kid, I think I saw the TV version of Peter Pan that was based on the stage play. I don't really remember it very well. But anyways, you do wonder, reading this book, how much of this humor comes from the stage play and how much of it is original to the book. Like I said before, so much of the humor is just the voice of the narrator, just kind of tongue-in-cheek making fun of everything as it's being narrated. So obviously that wouldn't translate to a stage play, right? So it makes me wonder if a lot of the humor that we associate with this book is just from the novel and not from the stage play. Somebody out there in YouTube who has read both the stage play and the novel, it would be interesting to do a side-by-side comparison of the style of them. There are definitely scenes in the novel where you can definitely see where those scenes come from the stage play. So, for example, when they first arrive in Neverland, there's a scene where everybody is chasing everyone else. So the Lost Boys are looking for Peter. I think the pirates are looking for the Lost Boys. The Indians are looking for the pirates. The animals are looking for the Indians. And they're all going around. And there's a scene where Hook and his pirates are looking around for Peter Pan. And then Hook hears the crocodile approach. So Hook runs away with the crocodile chasing him. And then the Lost Boys come to the same area that the pirates have just left. And so you're reading this and you can practically see the stage directions, right? Hook, exit stage right, pursued by the crocodile. Enter the Lost Boys. The whole thing seems to be set up for the stage. And there are actually a lot of scenes like that, where as you're reading it, you can see how all the action seems to be confined to one area, and you can just picture in your head how this must have looked on the stage. So yeah, the origins of this as a stage play are still evident in the novel, even though you get the impression that what really makes this book so delightful, the sarcastic voice of the narrator, probably must have originated from the novel, right? I don't know. Anyone out there who's read the stage play and can compare the two, let me know. Another little tidbit, which I really like about this book, is that the author, James M. Barrie, makes a deliberate attempt, he deliberately links his pirates to the pirates in Treasure Island. Now, Treasure Island was my other favorite story as a kid. If I had two favorite stories as a kid, I guess they would have been Peter Pan and Treasure Island. And yeah, the first time I read this, I think when I was in 6th grade, I noticed that some of the names were similar. But I think I thought that must have just been a coincidence. But of course, now we have the internet and you can look this stuff up. And no, it's not a coincidence. James M. Barrie was, I guess, friends with Robert Louis Stevenson and an admirer of Robert Louis Stevenson. So he deliberately links his pirates with the pirates from Treasure Island. So there are numerous references to Flint, the old pirate from Treasure Island, and his ship, the Walrus, again from Treasure Island, and Barbecue, or the Sea Cook, which were nicknames in Treasure Island for Long John Silver, are used repeatedly in Peter Pan. If memory serves, the name Long John Silver itself doesn't actually get mentioned in the book, although Flint and the Walrus gets mentioned. But the Sea Cook and Barbecue, Long John Silver's nicknames, get repeated numerous times in here. Apparently, Captain Hook was the only man that the Sea Cook feared, or Barbecue feared. So again, that's a reference to Treasure Island there. So that's another little tie-in. If you, like me, enjoy both of these books, it's kind of neat to know that they are both linked together. Now, I know I said I wasn't going to just make this video me recounting all the funniest parts from this book, but I can't resist it a little bit. To me, the funniest parts of this book are Mr. Darling and also Captain Hook. And in fact, when I used to teach English in Cambodia and Vietnam, I used to, with some of my more advanced students, would take excerpts from this book using Mr. Darling and have my students read those excerpts and then, maybe answer a few questions or do some vocabulary work with them. And usually it would get a laugh from my students. So there's, I guess I'm going to spoil this a little bit. There's a part in the beginning where Mr. Darling is trying to get Michael to take his medicine. And Michael keeps refusing, and Mr. Darling says, "Oh, Michael, when I was your age, I always took my medicine." And I said, "Thank you, Mother and Father, for buying me medicine to make me well." And then Wendy goes and gets Mr. Darling's medicine so that he could take it as an example to Michael. But Mr. Darling doesn't want to take his medicine, so he argues about it, and there's this whole scene, and it's just funny. It's the joke, of course, is that there's a grown man acting as a little kid, which is simple enough, but the execution of it works perfectly. I always find myself chuckling a little bit to myself when I read that section. There's also a section at the end when the children have been gone and Mr. Darling is feeling remorseful for his role in chaining up Nana the night that the children left. And so as a consequence, he, as a punishment for himself, he makes himself live in Nana's kennel. And he goes to work in the kennel. He has a kennel carried to work, which he was supposed to do to show how sorry he was for his actions. But it turns out that as society finds out what he's doing, he becomes a bit of a minor celebrity. And then there are crowds following the kennel home, where the carriage is taking it from work to home. And so Mrs. Darling has these conversations with him where she says, "You're quite sure that you feel bad about the children, George, right?" And he says, "Yeah, of course I feel bad. That's why I'm in the kennel." And she says, "But you're not enjoying being in the kennel, are you, George?" And he says, "How could you ask me that?" And again, the whole description of how he's living in the kennel, and it works. I think it's quite funny. And then the other really funny parts, I think, are the parts about the pirate, Captain Hook. And as you may know, it's a convention in the stage play that the character of Mr. Darling and Captain Hook were supposed to be played by the same actor, which was, I'm sure, supposed to represent something. That, I don't know, Captain Hook was the children's fear of authority, or the children's fear of growing old, or something like that. But we find out near the end of the book that Captain Hook was a former public school boy. Now, public school in England means something different than it does in America. It's a rather odd change of terminology, but as a British friend once explained it to me, he said, "Our public schools are like your private schools." So the public schools in England are the prestigious schools. Captain Hook, before he became a pirate, had been a public school boy, and had indoctrinated into him all these good manners, and also this obsession with good form. Captain Hook becomes obsessed with portraying good form, and he becomes very self-conscious when he realizes that Smee has good form and Peter Pan has good form, but he actually has bad form. He becomes more and more upset about it, to the point where this dominates his final confrontation with Peter Pan. His obsession with good form. And I won't quite spoil the ending, but it's just very funny to read this whole section. I was mentioning the similarities between Mr. Darling and Captain Hook, and how they're usually played by the same actor in the stage play. One similarity, I guess, that's very obvious is they're both very concerned about others' opinions about them. And they're both very concerned with being admired. So Mr. Darling is very upset because he thinks the dog doesn't admire him. And so Mrs. Darling has to say, no, George, I'm sure she admires you. And Captain Hook as well is concerned that people don't really admire him. I wonder if this is reading too much into it, but I remember in one of my history classes at college, the teacher talked about, near the end of the 19th century, what was called the bourgeois cult of respectability, where the middle class just became obsessed with being respectable. The stage play came out in 1904. The book came out in 1911. So, around that period, around the turn of the century, I wonder sometimes if this was supposed to be a commentary on the bourgeois cult of respectability. Or perhaps that's reading too much into it. I don't know. I don't know. You can try and explore this book for deeper themes if you're so inclined. Jordan Peterson has an interesting lecture where he, because you know that the crocodile is chasing Captain Hook, right? And the crocodile has got that ticking clock in it. And Jordan Peterson said that ticking clock represents time. And the crocodile has already eaten Captain Hook's hand. So Peter Pan, of course, is the eternal youth. Captain Hook is the represents the aging mortal man who time already has gotten a piece of, because the crocodile with the clock in it has already eaten one of Captain Hook's hands. I'm not sure if that's the original meaning, James M. Barrie, the original symbolism that he was intending, or if he was just intending the book to be silly. But yeah, it's interesting food for thought, isn't it? So, yeah. I think that's everything I want to say about this book. I mean, there are so many great funny parts, humorous parts in this book I haven't talked about yet. And part of me really wants to say, oh, that part was really funny, that part was really funny. There's a lot of great parts, but to do so would ruin the book. And besides, I'm not particularly good at retelling the funny parts. So if you have read the book, maybe leave a comment about what was your favorite humorous part. If you've not read the book, pick it up and enjoy it. And I think you'll find that there is a lot of great humor in this book, which makes it a pleasure to read for adults as well as for kids. Thank you, BookTube.